Are these the first volleys in America's next civil war?
He's not a tough guy. He's a bully and he's a bitch.
He's a punk. He's a dog. He's a pig.
And he can suck my
He's a con, a bullshit artist, a mutt.
I'll meet him in a hotel room any day of the week and give him a Louisville Slugger.
I'd like to punch him in the face.
Kiss my mother.
Which side of the aisle is really spewing hateful rhetoric?
Pointing what appears to be a water gun at the image of President Donald Trump projected on a whiteboard, art teacher Pale Modi has now been seen by countless viewers.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show, exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state.
It's an actor dressed to look just like President Donald Trump as he's assassinated on stage.
How much longer can America survive this kind of hatred?
Video depicting comedian Kathy Griffin holding the bloody, decapitated head of President Trump are no joking matter for the Secret Service.
The rhetoric that has inspired the violence has come from the mainstream of the Democratic Party.
They're involved in the coup, an active attempt to start a bloody civil war.
I want people to imagine an FBI director that has the stones to investigate the deep state. Imagine a justice system that has the integrity to prosecute corrupt government officials. They have refused to apply the 14th Amendment and give conservatives equal protection under the law. What we've seen here has been the gradual takeover of the government by corporatism, by globalism. They have wrested control of our government away from the citizenry and put it in the hands of a few special interests. And these special interests are as evil as the day is long.
We finally do have a president who has the integrity to do this. We finally do have a DOJ who has the integrity to do this. We know that we have people around the president who not only have the integrity, but have the information and the contacts to get everything done you just said. And you say, well, why aren't they doing it? Everything you're seeing on the news, that's what it's about. That's what this investigation's about. That's what calls of impeachment are about. That's what the globalist attack against Trump is about. That's what the hearings are about. That's what the allegations of Russian spying are about. It's about keeping them off point, keeping them off the agenda, keeping them off task. A lot of what you're watching happening right now, and the misdirection and the complete trying to keep Trump off target goes to that birth certificate. The worst crime in American history was perpetrated against America under the regime of Barack Obama. The media is complicit. Congress is complicit. Federal law enforcement apparently has been complicit. We've got a CIA whistleblower, Dennis Montgomery, whose attorney, Larry Klayman, put it all over the internet the other day that he has said that all of this spying that's been going on American people, that it resulted in manipulation and collusion with judges, Supreme Court justices, congressmen, etc., that James Comey was involved in it, that he was at the top of it. All of this stuff you're seeing about Donald Trump's with the Russians, Donald Trump needs to be impeached, Donald Trump, this is a smokescreen to keep our eyes off of what really happened and what's really going on. And America had better wake up to this, JJ.
Your federal government, your federal law enforcement agencies, our federal intelligence agencies, your federal government in toto has been compromised. The fact that Donald Trump has arrived and said, I'm not going to go along with the status quo anymore, is the cause for alarm for these people on the left. And ultimately, Carl, is it possible that yesterday was simply the first shot fired in an impending civil war between two irreconcilable ideologies?
I don't want our children and grandchildren to see or to participate or to fall victim to such a thing. I don't want our nation to go through such a thing. I don't know that we could survive that. Like Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, when he said, now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any other nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. I mean, God's people, we need to pray. We need to not be afraid to speak truth.
Weekdays from noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, The J.J. McCartney Show, exposing the truth, exposing the lies, exposing the deep state. The following is a Nightside Radio Studios production.
From the wind-powered Nightside Radio Studios,
tear down this wall.
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
It's this man. It's the compassion. It's the dignity. It's the wisdom. It's the horse sense of the guy.
Did you know that 65% of the people murdered in the last 10 years were killed by handguns?
Would it make you feel any better, little girl, if they was pushed out of windows?
The American people have seen the truth, and they can see through your lies. There's coming a day when publications such as yours turn into nothing more than flea market advertising. They'll be handing it out for free in grocery store parking lots under everybody's windshield wiper. Yeah, that's the future for the Washington Post and the New York Times and every other liberal publication in this country. We are not going to tolerate your bull anymore. None of it. The American people are fed up. I thought we made that clear on November 8th, but apparently you people in the media just don't get it. A new chapter in American history begins now.
It is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you the President-elect of the United States of America.
Donald Trump is the person to make America great again.
We are a team.
They said it couldn't be done.
Together we will lead our party back to the White House.
He said it must be done.
Beginning on January 20th, we cannot afford to be so politically correct anymore. The most important difference between our plan and that of our opponent is that our plan will put America first.
Here's J.J. McCartney.
All right, thank you, Marcus, and hello, everybody. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show on this 22nd day of February. We've got Michael Cutler on the broadcast today, and ladies and gentlemen, plenty to talk about. We've got fake news from CNN. They've doubled down on the lies that they tell. I tell you what, folks, I'm amazed they're still in business. Plus, we got so much more to bring you from around the world and around the corner on the Thursday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show with Michael Cutler coming up next. All right, welcome, everybody. It's great to have you with us. And Michael Cutler, it's great to have you with us as well.
Always great joining you, JJ. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, first of all, I know I'm no Joe Piscopo, but tell us a little bit about your visit with Joe Piscopo yesterday.
Well, I've been on a show many times over the years, but never live and in person in studio. So they said, can you come into the studio? And it was really funny. New York traffic, you have to experience it to believe it. I actually could not get into the studio in time to do the show live, so we taped the segment, and that's how we started out talking about the travails of trying to get into that studio. But Joe does a really good job. He's very entertaining, very bright guy. For those of you old enough to remember, he was one of the early, if not one of the original cast members of Saturday Night Live. Real nice guy. I brought my youngest son with me, so he got to sit in the studio. He was off camera. But we did an interview on DACA. And they frequently have me come on, and, we're both New Yorkers, Joe Piscopo, myself, and we really relate to these issues. But, I have to tell you, we started out, Joe and I, talking about something that I think everyone needs to have a serious conversation about. I do a lot of writing for Front Page Magazine. I do a lot of writing for The Social Contract. Occasionally Newsmax asks for a piece, or I just send them a piece. And when you look at the comments that people write, folks, we are at war with ourselves. It has to stop. I have to tell you, I'm a registered Democrat. And when I look at statements in response to my articles, well, the libertards don't get it. The Democrats don't get it. Talk about the politicians. It's not the average American citizen who should be attacked by either side. This is exactly the divide and conquer strategy that the Russians have been using. I don't doubt that their fingerprints are all over it. If you look at Antifa, if you look at the shutdown of debate on our college campuses, That's what happens in a totalitarian state. It's like the Model T Ford. You can get it in any color as long as the color you want is black. And what we have done in America has made it virtually impossible to have an honest conversation. The media is to blame. The politicians are to blame. But when we attack each other as American citizens, we're doing our enemies' dirty work for them. What do you think of that statement, JJ?
Well, I agree completely. The problem is the dialogue has descended into meaningless and really harsh rhetoric that doesn't advance any kind of intellectual discourse. All it does is lead to vitriol, anger, hurt feelings, and the word hatred.
Polarization.
The word hatred. The word hatred should not, be something that we indulge in. And I was talking about this yesterday because I spent virtually the entire broadcast yesterday remembering a great man, Billy Graham. And the point that I came away from it with, after airing a lot of things that he had to say in his sermons and everything, and of course, as you know, I am a devout Christian, but the thing that I really came away with was, and it's something I'm vowing to do something about, changing this show a little bit, and that is, I'm not going to spend nearly as much time dwelling on Islam, dwelling on what is wrong with all of these people that are coming across the border from Islamic nations, where we know that there's a lot of problems with everything that they believe in. But I want to spend more time working on me. I want to spend more time making sure that I am being consistent with who I am and with what I believe. Because if all you do is engage in rhetoric, then when you talk about your faith, whatever your faith may be, if you talk about it and then don't live consistently with it, well, then you become a hypocrite and people just tune you out.
You're right. And we really need to also not use religion as a divisive mechanism or a mechanism for division. I'm Jewish. And when you look at the history of both of our great religions, had there been no Jews, there would have been no Christians. So when you look at dividing lines, we've got to start taking down the dividing lines. And the only people that need to be in the outer circle are lying journalists, and all too often that's a redundant statement, and duplicitous politicians. Again, all too often that's a redundant statement. And as Americans, we can disagree. That's fine. We're supposed to. The democratic process is ugly. They always say if you saw how they made sausage, you'd never eat another sausage. It's not supposed to be neat or clean or whatever. But the whole point, and my degree was in communications, arts, and sciences. I've been debating since I was 14 years old. I wasn't much of an athlete. If you put a gun to my head and told me to go play football, basketball, I would have said, shoot me when I was a kid. It ain't happening. But I never lost the debate. Debate is intellectual capitalism. And I made that point on Joe's show yesterday. The idea is that you bring your ideas of whatever it is to the marketplace. That's how capitalism works. And then the audience, the consumer, gets to decide what they want to buy. And when all we can do is fling insults at each other, then we debase the process, we polarize America, and we're acting in a very un-American way.
And it causes anybody out there that might be on the listening end of this conversation, it causes them to say, well, if this is all they can do is just bash all day long, then I'm just not going to participate anymore. And that's the worst thing we can do. Out. It's the worst thing we can do.
I was in Arizona years ago, and I was there with Don Goldwater. Don is the nephew of Barry Goldwater. Don ran unsuccessfully for governor, and we became friends. And so he invited me to this huge speaking event at a huge auditorium. I mean, my goodness gracious, it was packed. And one guy stood up and started to just hurl insults at Democrats. And Don kind of looked at me and he just shrugged his shoulders and he kind of shook his head with his eyes closed like, oh boy, he rolled his eyes. And I, Democrats are baby killers and Democrats are this. And I stood up and I said, well, I've never killed a baby. I happen to personally like women and, tried to refute some of the vitriol that was being spewed. And I said, look, what is the purpose to this meeting that we're having here tonight? If this is just about bashing fellow Americans so you can somehow feel better, then there's no reason for this meeting. We can all go home. Yeah. We are not going to address the challenges we face and make progress as long as this room is only filled with people who lean way to the right. Half of this audience should be centrists and leaning maybe to the liberal side. We need to come to a consensus. And when you start...
Please tell the host what you would like to talk about, then press the pound key.
Well, isn't that sweet?
There you go.
Sorry about that, Michael. Yeah, we're...
No, it's okay. It happens. Look, last week I tried to air my show and the computer kicked me out of my own show. So somebody emailed me and said, I hope you weren't talking to yourself for an hour. I said, well, I do that for the better part of the week, so why should Friday night be any different? but you know,
my. Yeah, you know the thing that you know.
Do I make sense to you though? Do I make sense to you, George?
You know, the thing is, I mean, we are at a real crossroads as a nation right now.
Yeah.
And you know the thing is, I mean, we have, first of all, we have Donald Trump in the White House. And whether people want to admit it to themselves or not, all of the alarmists out there that were swearing that this was going to be the end of America as we know it were proven to be mistaken. And you know, this he has taken a remarkably dignified route as president. Now, there's things that I personally wouldn't have recommended, but we are not inside his head. And what I believe is happening with Donald Trump is very simply that he is using Twitter to communicate directly with the American people without any filters. And in that respect, he diminishes the news media, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, the news media, look at what CNN has done this week again. Now, let's go back in time to the presidential debates and recall that Donna Brazile was involved with CNN in funneling the questions to Hillary Clinton during the debates. And I mean, this is lecherous behavior by a so-called news network. And then this week, in the aftermath of the shooting, the Parkland massacre, the Valentine's Day massacre, if you will, a young man who was one of the survivors, 17 years old. His name is Colton Hobb. He was telling his story, and CNN wanted to bring him in to a town hall type meeting with state politicians. I believe Marco Rubio was there, possibly the governor as well. Well, they tried to plant a question with this young man that he personally objected to. And at the end of the day, he and his father decided that if this whole thing was going to be scripted, they're not going to be a part of it. And
excellent.
And CNN comes out and denies that that's what they did. But, you know, I choose to believe the 17-year-old who heroically shielded others with his body during the shooting. I personally think he has more credibility than CNN, who says this was their statement. They said there is absolutely no truth to the CNN, or rather to this. CNN did not provide any scripted questions for anyone in last night's town hall. Now, Michael Cutler, who are you going to believe?
Look, we know what's going on with the media. I have to tell you, and I'm not going to claim to be a gun expert, but I'm certainly very familiar with firearms. I also started out studying engineering. So I have a little concept of how guns operate. You know, I've had some of the finest firearms training you could possibly have as a federal agent, and I had to qualify every 90 days. But 2 days ago, the local CBS station in New York, almost like the weather report, every 10 or 15 minutes kept playing the same interview. It was mind-boggling. Every 10 to 15 minutes, here's this guy ranting, raving, ranting, carrying on, and it went on for like 2 minutes, this screed about guns and killing people, and why don't we go to a range, and I'll take an AK-47, and I'll open fire on you, and that bullet comes out of the barrel, and it is tumbling end over end over end, so it's a cutting machine. It doesn't make a neat wound. It slices you to pieces. It's against the Geneva Accord. went on and on about the AK-47 and I believe the AR-15. Both of those weapons are illegal. They are simply mass killing machines. So, look, if anybody is familiar with firearms, there is a term, appropriately enough, we know what a rifle looks like, long gun. There's something known as rifling. What rifling is, if you look down the barrel of most modern guns, there's a corkscrew-like swirl that's carved into the barrel. It's in handguns, and it extends to long guns. The only guns that don't bother with that are shotguns because you're not dealing with a single projectile, generally. But if you look at down the barrel of a rifle, if you put light through there, you can put your thumb at the base of it. Obviously, an unloaded gun. Don't go shooting yourself in the head.
Thank you for that. Yes.
People do dumb things. I mean, I could tell you legendary stories. Probably the worst story I ever heard was about a young rookie cop who was cleaning his gun, and to his horror, realized he had loaded it and forgot how to decock the gun. True story. I got this from a friend in the police department. So this kid, not knowing what to do, panicked and fired his gun into his toilet and shattered the toilet. And then he had to explain that to his superiors.
Oh, my goodness, what an expensive lesson.
What an yes, well, the Darwin Award, take people out of the gene pool before they can procreate. But so anyway, but I'm just trying to get people to understand what's going on. There's a very definite reason why gun makers go to that expense and bother of putting in those grooves that look like a corkscrew.
That's right.
And the idea is that as the bullet goes through the barrel, it starts spinning.
Yes.
And just like a spinning football, it stabilizes the bullet in flight. All right. Now, this is a principle of physics. This is all about momentum and all about the gyroscopic stability. And so on. That's how a gyro works. It spins and it gains stability by spinning. Bullets do the same thing. Footballs properly thrown do the same thing. There is no way that a bullet comes out of any firearm that has a rifle barrel tumbling. It is physically impossible, okay?
Well, the only way that it would be possible is if it had deflected off of something.
Yes, right. Yeah. If you hit something, then all bets are off. Because now, because we've imparted to it, again, a vector problem, so now it's no longer just acting on inertia. Now, according to the studies that I could find online, I started digging around, and they said, yes, a rifled bullet, let's say from an AK-47 or an AR-15, will eventually tumble, but after it goes subsonic, goes below the speed of sound. Now, these bullets generally come out with a muzzle velocity in excess of 2,000 feet per second. Now, to give you a quick idea, that's roughly twice the speed of sound. Okay?
Yes.
So the bullet comes out traveling at roughly twice the speed of sound, and it will travel between 300 to 600 yards before it will go subsonic. So the bullet will not tumble for at least 300 to possibly 600 yards. Nobody in these school shootings is getting shot by a round that's traveling that distance. Now, obviously, dead is dead, and we're not having that part of the conversation. What's disturbing to me is that a very credible news organization, CBS News Radio 880 New York City, put this guy on who professed to be an expert on firearms or said, I'm familiar with guns, I'm a hunter, whatever the preamble was before he went off on his rant and rave, and started talking about how these guns violate the Geneva Accord because the bullet comes out of the barrel tumbling. Now, we can have every other conversation, but folks, every element of these news releases need to be factually accurate.
Yes, they do. And what happened to fact checking?
Well, it's gone because now it's about the narrative.
Ah, yes.
And we're look, I'll give you an example, and I don't know why President Trump is doing this, and I'm very much concerned. I mean, for now, it seems his proposal to legalize DACA aliens seems to be tabled, but there's a lot of lies being told by the media. One of the big ones, they keep describing the DACA, quote-unquote, kids. They came as kids. We don't know that. In fact, I just had an argument with a former immigration employee who's not even thinking.
Michael,
and I said...
before we drift off the subject of the Florida shooting and the town hall meeting and all this, I did want to mention a couple more things. Well, first of all, National Rifle Association spokeswoman Dana Lesh was speaking this morning at CPAC And
she does a great job, by the way. I used to be on her internet television program. Dana's wonderful.
Right. And she said that she wouldn't have been able to attend last night's town hall meeting because she wouldn't have been able to exit safely. There were people chanting, terrible things about Dana Loesch. And one of the things that they said was essentially, and pardon me while I'm dealing with a little bit of a computer issue here. You know how it is. Computers are the curse.
I don't know why computers don't come with their own little hammers,
But the crowd was yelling, "Burn her," last night.
Wow.
And one other thing, because hypocrisy works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
George Clooney decided to attend this rally. And saying that something has to be done for the sake of our kids. And he donated $500,000, he and his wife, in the name of their children, to this cause of trying to ban what they call assault weapons. And here's the thing. George Clooney, of course, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And, he was privileged from the time he was a child. Right. Certainly he's amassed a fortune in his acting career, but he profited $500 billion in the sale of his tequila manufacturing company that he owned. Now, here's what I wonder. This man made $500 billion. The actual sale price of the tequila company was in excess of $1 billion. Now, there are many more people that die on America's roadways as victims of drunken driving
Yep.
than there are people that are killed by mass shootings or otherwise. And my question is, if you're going to blame the firearm for the mass shooting, then wouldn't you also blame the tequila and the alcohol manufacturers for all of the drunken driving instances that end in people dying? And if so, what's the difference? It's the same principle.
Well, I'll go a step further. I was actually thinking along a different line. We've seen terrorists of late using motor vehicles as a method of mass destruction. So how about we outlaw vehicles?
That's right. And
think of what happened in Europe. Think about what happened on the west side of Manhattan, where this guy took a truck and mowed down and killed 8 bicyclists.
Yep, it happened in Paris. It happened.
And so I guess really what we really need to now do is call for a banning of internal combustion engines and vehicles that can go more than maybe 5 miles an hour.
Right. Absolutely.
See,
it's the same principle. You're exactly right.
Right. And so my point is this: do something. Well, wait a moment. Before we do something, let's have an idea of what it is you're trying to accomplish.
Yes.
And I don't have all the answers, and I've spent basically my adult life in law enforcement. I have, I think, a certain level of credibility in certain areas. I've been before a bunch of congressional hearings. The 9/11 Commission sought my testimony because I've arrested terrorists in my career. I've helped to legislate laws in Washington. I worked with Al D'Amato unofficially to create the aggravated felon reentry law. So I know a little something about law enforcement, terrorism, and I don't have the solutions to some of these problems.
Right.
Nobody really has an ironclad. One of the fathers who was distraught, and you wanted to cry watching him. My daughter is in a cemetery. That's where I'm going to visit her from now on. We had 9/11 and they solved it. Well, we didn't. And then the media expunged that part of his statement when it went online. I saw it on ABC News last night. He was at the White House with the president. He said, 9/11 happened and we solved that problem. Why can't we do it with schools and guns? Whoa, time out.
Yeah.
9/11 wasn't solved. We've had many more attacks since then, some costing lives. And I think that family members who lost relatives and friends and so forth must be very upset when people say, well, we solved the problem. We didn't. These aren't problems that are easily solvable with, forgive me for saying that, given what we're discussing, a magic bullet.
Right.
There isn't a solution to be found, but there's layers. And when we have children, and I'm glad they're being encouraged to become activists and become politically motivated, I think that's wonderful. But we're talking about kids who have no real world experience. they're being given a lot of credibility and a lot of airtime by the fawning media, and whatever they say is cute, wonderful, precious, and brilliant. Wait a moment. What are you basing your so-called solutions on? We're going to get a hold of the NRA records, and we're going to go after any politician taking money from the NRA. Well, why don't we go after the politicians who take money from the Chamber of Commerce? Because they're happy with open borders, and with open borders comes drugs, and with drugs comes violence and so forth. Why don't we go after the American Immigration Lawyers Association? Because they don't want illegals deported. They are a voice that is behind the sanctuary movement, because when you deport an illegal alien, you're also deporting one of their potential clients. So let's go down the list of all the people who directly or indirectly are contributing to lawlessness. Most of the violent crime that we're seeing is either caused by crazies, by terrorists, and you could maybe say some of them are nuts, maybe not, and by the gangs and drugs. The average American doesn't go out and start shooting people.
No.
I've carried a firearm since 1975 when I became an INS special agent. And I can tell you that there were about 3 or 4 situations on duty where I almost had to use my gun against another human being. Each time I felt sweat running down my back, because if you're rational and moral, the last thing you ever want to do is to have to shoot another human being. Now, Michael, thank God I didn't have to.
Michael, I want to take a quick break. We'll come back in just a moment. I want to shift the focus to the FBI. There's been a lot said about this crime, and there's a lot of said about what could have been done, what should have been done in the aftermath. We'll talk more about that with Michael Cutler, our guest, and we will be right back with more on the Thursday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show in just 1 minute. Stay with us.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
Hey, everybody. J.J. McCartney back here for our good friends at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. You know, folks, there's one thing that there never seems to be a shortage of in this world, and that is uncertainty, unrest. You know, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. Natural disasters, economic downturns, whatever it is, you can be prepared by going to MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. They have got everything you need, from ProPure gravity-fed water filtration systems to Kimberly stoves to these composting toilets. Ladies and gentlemen, at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com, you can prepare for anything. Food storage, no problem. Advice, no problem. Call our good friend Sue at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com. Find out what's there for you. Great prices, great advice, and guess what, folks? You'll find it all at MountainViewOffGridLiving.com.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I was sensitive to lights and sounds, so I built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. Sometimes I do the same things over and over, until one day I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The J.J. McCartney Show.
There was a tree in the middle of a yard, the prettiest tree that you ever did see. And the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around, and on that tree there were some holes, the ugliest holes that you ever did see. And the holes on the tree, and the trees in the ground, and the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around, and in that hole there was some frass, sawdusty frass that you ever did see. And the frass in the holes on the tree, and the trees in the ground, and the ALB goes around, all around, and the ALB goes around. Now there's no more tree in the middle of that yard. It's the deadest tree that you ever did see. Because the beetle killed the tree, and the tree hit the ground, and the ALB still goes all around, and the ALB goes around.
Spot the signs and stop the Asian longhorned beetle. Learn all the signs at AsianLonghornedBeetle.com.
Okay, we are back with Michael Cutler on the Thursday edition of the J.J. McCartney Show. A lot has been said in the aftermath of the Parkland school shooting last week, and one thing that I think the conversation needs to be had at a very high level. The FBI was notified by a gentleman in Mississippi who had posted a YouTube video, Michael, And he had somebody comment on the video, and it was Nicholas Cruz. And he actually said that he intended to become a professional school shooter. So the creator of the video contacted YouTube and the FBI. The FBI came and visited him, and that was the end of it. That was the end of it. However, at this same time, Nicholas Cruz had posted videos online of slitting his own wrists. He had talked extensively about animals that he had killed with his BB gun, et cetera, et cetera. And the deputy sheriff had been called to his home 39 times. Michael, how in the world does this fall through the cracks, and what is the culpability of the FBI in this whole thing?
You know, I don't know. I'd love to see how FBI management dealt with it. I'd love to see what the memos look like going back and forth, how deeply they dug. Could they define which Nicholas Cruz it was? He spelled his name a little differently. Maybe they could have found him. I don't know. I have to tell you, it raises so many questions. I'm not ready to, to throw them totally under the bus. But boy, oh boy, there needs to be some kind of accountability here.
Isn't this the same? Isn't this the same conversation that we were having after 9/11?
Yes,
about different agencies sharing information. And
I agree. So let me. Well, first of all, I just wanted to finish something that we would get on before we move on. Two quick points that we really need to talk about. First of all, we know where Hollywood stands on firearms. I'd like $1 for every movie that's been released in the last 10 years that glamorized violence.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'd like $1 for every video game that glamorizes violence and teaches people how to shoot people and learn strategies.
Desensitizes people. Right.
Yes, and to look for concealment and then shoot on the move and so forth. What are we doing? What are we doing? There used to be standards in the movies about you couldn't show police defeated. You couldn't show this. You couldn't show that. And I'm a pretty liberal guy. I'll be honest with you. Sex doesn't bother me particularly as long as we're not depicting rape or that sort of thing. One of my favorite posters that I saw, which I thought was the absurdity of how crazy we used to be. It showed a woman's breast and it said, "Keep out of the hands of children." All right, think about that.
Another thing.
My point is this. When you glamorize violence, that's the real pornography to my thinking.
And
when you show violence, when you show the kind of crazy stuff you see in the movies, Fast and Furious.
This relates directly to that, I believe, Michael. And I don't know how prevalent it is, but I know a lot of people over the years that have participated in this, and it's paintball. Paintball, they actually, I mean, the whole point is to shoot people with a gun. It's
used for law enforcement for training, which makes sense. Okay?
Right. But for the regular folks out there, I mean, what are we, like you said, what are we doing? We're conditioning people, young people, to go out there with guns and shoot at other people. I mean, it's crazy.
And now look at rap music. Heather McDonald did a very interesting interview with Joe Piscopo. You can go to the website to Joe Piscopo. You can see my interview. Heather was talking about Black America and the rate of homicide and so forth. Listen to some of the lyrics of the rap music.
Yes. Yeah. Especially you want to talk about misogyny. There you go.
And when you have families that are dysfunctional, when you have children having children, 15-year-old girls getting pregnant and having babies, and there's no one there to raise the kids. I was very clear with my children. They weren't even allowed to have toy guns growing up in my house. Right. I said, guns are not toys. We don't play with them. You don't mess with them. They knew I had a firearm. I came home. I secured it. When they saw me carrying the gun, I said, if you're curious about it, I'll be happy to make it safe, and you can see how it works. I don't want this to be forbidden fruit where you got to go look at it because Daddy's got a gun. I sat them down because we had cases of little kids picking up Daddy's gun and shooting themselves. A DEA agent lost his 4-year-old son that way. And we all cried with him. I mean, we went nuts when we heard what happened. So I didn't want it to be forbidden fruit, so it was done in a way where they were taught, you don't touch it, you don't mess with it, this is how it works. And I showed them on movies look at the consequence. The guy just got shot. He's bleeding. It's graphic. You can't undo it. There's no reset button. So that's one thing. But you have movies that glamorize violence and mass killing and on, the repetition. And you say to yourself, so these are the people. Liam Neeson is a great example. Against guns. How many times have you seen him in movies mowing people down with firearms?
I have a special set of skills. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you have a child who's 13 years old and comes home after school, there's no adult there, he pops a movie on, and he's watching Liam Neeson, and there's no one sitting there saying, well, this is Hollywood, this isn't how you behave. I mean, think of Clint Eastwood. You don't think we're going to let you get away with that? And he comes out of the kitchen, and these guys are robbing everyone in this Dunkin' Donuts or whatever the place is, and the guy goes, who's we, sucker? And he says it with a cup of coffee in one hand, nothing in the other hand, Smith, Wesson, and then when he says me, he draws and starts shooting everybody.
Yeah.
In the real world, he would have been cut down when he walked out of the kitchen. Hollywood isn't real. But if you don't have a child with an adult sitting there and saying, this is all make-believe nonsense, then a kid looks at that and says, so that's how you solve that problem. Aha.
Yeah.
You got to get a gun, and I'm going to kill the people that insulted me or insulted my brother or whatever. I have a grievance, and obviously I'm going to get a gun because that's how my hero solved the problem in the movies. And who are the heroes? Hollywood actors who are out there screaming the loudest. And you had a kid a couple days ago attack a man who was holding up a sign. And when I heard about it, I flipped. Because you know what the guy was calling for? They were saying, let's ban guns. And this poor guy who was holding up a sign said, are you ready for this controversial statement? Let's have armed police in schools to protect our children.
Right. You know, the suggestion...
That's controversial?
You want to know what the most self-defeating thing that they've done...
What are we doing?
...is declare every school a gun-free zone. So they're sitting ducks. They are sitting ducks.
Yes, and so if you're a terrorist...
It doesn't work.
What did we see in Russia and other countries? They're terrorists. They want to inflict the most barbaric harm on the most vulnerable. Who am I describing? Children, okay? Yep. And what you see, the problem with politicians are their egos and their disconnect from the real world, okay? They live in the quantum world, you know, where you can be in 3 places at one time. So what do they do? What do these crazies do? We're going to solve the problem by writing a law. Well, let me tell you, man's laws, legislated laws, I don't want to be sexist here, legislated laws aren't worth anything if they're either not enforced or can't be enforced. I mean, could you imagine how great it would be if you could pass laws and it would come to pass godlike, where you pass a law and immediately the universe changes? Think how easily we could go to Mars. Just suspend the law of gravity. Pass a law that outlaws gravity at Cape Canaveral. You could fire rockets into space. Wouldn't need fuel because we just suspended gravity.
What do they say? You wish in one hand, spit in the other, and see which one fills up first. Now, here's the thing. I mean, you know, if
you're right, but say, go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you you know, you consider the situation with schools, and they're calling for gun bans and all these other things, and it serves no purpose whatsoever except to make it even easier. Because when a law gets passed, I mean, how many hardened criminals do you know that stop and say, "Ooh, I better not rob this liquor store because they just passed a law against it"? I mean, my God, these people don't care what law you pass. They're going to find a way.
Right. So now let's look at the immigration debate and the hypocrisy of the idiots that we elect to legislate. I testified before the New York State Senate about driver's licenses for illegal aliens. What's the first thing they said? Well, they're going to drive anyway. Well, wait a moment. So you're waving the white flag there, but when you say gun-free zones, they're going to abide by those laws.
Right. Yeah.
Think about the disconnect. So the solution is gun-free zone. Some terrorist hits it's like a cartoon, right? He sees the sign. From this point forward, firearms illegal. And he immediately runs to a trash can and throws his gun in the trash can, because certainly he's not going to cross that line with the gun on his hip, is he?
Exactly. There is no respect for the rule of law among people that do these things.
But sociopaths and law violators and terrorists and criminals are what they are because they disregard the laws. So what are you telling them? If you bring a gun to a gun-free zone, you know how they say never bring a knife to a gunfight?
Yep.
Well, that's what we've intentionally done to our school.
That's right. You made them sitting ducks. And for those people that want to say, well, he was insane. No, this was quite premeditated. It really was. He planned this out meticulously, even to setting off the fire alarms so that the hallways of the schools became his shooting gallery.
Flooded with kids.
That's right.
And maybe he was nuts. And, look, I had a partner at work. He was very funny. You develop a gallows sense of humor if you spend enough years in law enforcement. I did the job for 30 years. And he'd look at a situation when we executed search warrants, whatever, and he had this great line. He'd say, I don't know what the color of the sky is in this guy's world, but sure as hell it's not blue. And we used to laugh all the time. But understand that most people are a little bit wacky, truth be known. Execute enough search warrants, and I'm convinced that everyone has a little bit of a fuzzy problem. And it's not if they're nuts, it's a matter of to what extent and in what direction. But everyone has their own little crazy stuff going on. But that doesn't mean that they don't pose a threat to our survival. And you've got to be tactical in your thinking. And now we come back to these kids who are 17, 18, whatever. What tactical training do they possess that makes them the experts who are going to go to the White House and say to the president, and this, Mr. President, is how you're going to keep us safe? I'm glad that they had the opportunity to meet with the president. I'm glad that he took time to listen to them and their parents. But how many people in that room with the president had real tactical training, law enforcement background, or training in psychology? Probably not many. Probably not many. And so, yes, I in New York City, they have metal detectors and the doors to the schools are locked from the inside. You can't get in. Everyone entering a school has to pass through a metal screener, a metal detector, and they have wands. If that doesn't work, and you have security guards all over the school, and if anyone tries to get near the doors, alarms go off, people immediately respond. It's pretty effective, I have to tell you. And you add to that, put a couple of armed police. Now, there was an armed officer in the school, apparently, and they're still trying to find out where he was and why he didn't respond. I don't know what that story is. But let's look at it logically, okay? Simply telling people don't bring guns is like telling people don't speed on the highway, don't text and drive. Without consequences, people are going to violate the law. So how do you back it up for the guy that doesn't want to read the sign or maybe can't read English, okay? What does that mean, gun-free zone? So understand the problem. Presume that the bad guy is not going to pay attention to gun-free zone. What's your plan B? And apparently for most schools, there has been no plan B. And so no one is saying, well, maybe we need metal detectors. Maybe we should have teams of officers. What they're doing in Florida now is to have the sheriffs on the campus with long guns. And that's fine. These are trained people. I don't know if I want to give guns to school teachers, although the one teacher who lost his life had been a Navy SEAL. I certainly have every confidence that he had a gun in his hand.
Right.
It would have been a very different outcome. But my point is there are ways that communities can protect the children, and eliminating guns may not actually give you the desired effect.
No,
in Israel, what they have found, because everyone has to serve in the military, how many terrorist attacks have been thwarted by an armed civilian who had military training and saw the guy with the suicide vest and shot the guy in the head, or did whatever it was he had to do. And so we're going to attack the guns, attack the people, and devise strategies that make it impossible for these people to gain access the way they do.
And I think the biggest deterrent would be the knowledge that people within that school, and you don't know who they are carrying.
Ready, willing, and able.
Exactly.
If come after you.
If the criminal knows that there's going to be resistance, they'll probably go try and find another target.
They're looking for a soft target, and we've made our schools the softest of targets.
Exactly. It's the same thing with other public facilities. I mean, when you ban guns, then the only people that are going to be carrying guns are going to be
law violators.
Exactly right. See, why is it that this logic cannot penetrate the brains of the media And
because they're not going to give you the opportunity to be heard, because the agenda is guns are evil. And we all know how effective the gun laws in Chicago have been. New York has been very safe.
Now,
we have a lot of police there.
What is the underlying agenda behind them wanting to take guns out of the hands of the people?
Well, I think it varies. I think some people are truly scared of guns. They didn't grow up in a gun culture. They don't understand firearms. It's funny. My first wife passed away many years ago. That certainly wasn't funny. It was a tragedy in so many ways. Her mother had been in a concentration camp. And when I first was dating my first wife, I would be off duty, federal agent. I had to carry all the time. You never know we used to carry pagers when the damn thing was going to go off, and we were running to wherever. You can't be there without your weapon. You're worthless. And she would say, "Oh, my God, you have a gun." I said, "Well, I'm not a bank robber." And we used to have fights over this. Towards the end of her life, we got into a discussion about the Holocaust. And my own family was ravaged by the Nazi bastards. I was named for my mother's mother, who died in Poland. And I'm very concerned that the president of Poland now wants to make it a crime if you talk about Poland's involvement in the Holocaust. There's something going on here that really disturbs me tremendously, and that's a story for another day. But I said, why didn't the Jews fight back? Why did we allow this? And she said, well, the Germans had guns and we didn't. And I said, if you had your way, you would take the guns away from every law-abiding American. I said, you were disturbed that I showed up in your house when I first met you, and you knew I was a federal agent. The first thing I did when I walked in and I saw their eyes get to be the size of dinner plates, I said, calm down. I handed them my credentials and said, I'm a federal agent, so that you know why I have that. And when I came to their house, I used to put it on top of a bookcase. I didn't want the damn thing sitting on my hip. It's a pain in the rear end.
Right.
So I immediately took it off. I put it on top of the bookcase. It stayed there until I was ready to leave. But my gosh, you would have thought I brought a hand grenade into their house. And I said, do you understand? She says, yes, but people say. And I said, we keep coming back to people listening to other people as though somehow this person who's in front of that camera has a brain in his.
President Trump. I'm sorry.
Now, I've got to give you one quick story, and I want your audience to see this. Two quick stories about DACA. Number one, and here's where General Kelly's getting it wrong. I'm sure he was a good general. I'm not attacking General Kelly. He knows nothing about immigration. And someone said to me, well, he was the head of DHS for a couple of months. I said, believe me, no one educated him. He was a four-star general. He was there to tell them how to do their job, whether he knew or not, because generals are like that all too often. What does he know about immigration? Nothing. And what did he say? Well, maybe the kids didn't come forward because they were scared or they were lazy. They couldn't get their rear ends off the couch. How about maybe they weren't here, General? Maybe they still aren't here and will come here and lie about their dates of entry if you create a program like that. So when Donald Trump said 1.6 million or 1.8 million aliens would benefit by this program, and the Migration Policy Institute pegged the number at double that, 3.6 million. What if it turns out to be 5 or 8 million? Number one, no interviews, no field investigations. You may have criminals joining us again, but it's also all these people are going to be legally entitled to a job and have equal right to a job as an American born in the country. Why would you flood America potentially with still more foreign workers, and all of the gains that Donald Trump made would be erased literally overnight, and damage to national security would be profound and it would be irrevocable. So that's item number one. Item number two, to show you how the system does not work. And I believe there'll be an article coming out tonight, frontpagemag.com. Please check that out, or check out my website, michaelcutler.net, C-U-T-L-E-R, michaelcutler.net, one word. Here's the beauty. I don't know if you saw it, JJ. Here's the headline. Saudi graduate of al-Qaeda terror training camp arrested in Oklahoma. Alleged classmate of 9/11 hijackers attended U.S. flight school in Oklahoma in 2016.
Wow.
How does that one grab you?
Well,
so picture this. We admitted this guy legally in 2011. His wife had a student visa. He's admitted as the spouse of a student. When he registered for flight school in 2016, he had to submit his fingerprints, and then the FBI realized who he was. Meanwhile, how did they know who he was? His fingerprints were found on his application, I kid you not, for al-Qaeda terror. He was at least 4 of the 9/11 hijackers in Afghanistan attended the very same flight school, terror school, and this guy's application with his father's phone number as a reference was discovered by our troops when they went into Afghanistan.
Wow.
They were able to get his fingerprints, and so they knew from the fingerprints who he was, but apparently the information wasn't transmitted, so State Department gave him a visa. He's been living in the United States for 7 years,
wow,
and only came to the FBI's attention when he applied to flight school. So now here's the three possibilities. He's decided he doesn't want to play terrorist anymore, and he's just looking to fly an airplane the way I did as a kid, because I took flying lessons. I had about 20-odd hours solo time. Maybe he just wants to fly. Or maybe he's thinking about getting a pilot's license so he can carry out an attack in a small plane. Or, and here's the one, welcome to my world of nightmares. Not unlike the 9/11 hijackers, he is one of many, many who are attempting to get flight training to hijack airplanes in America to recreate 9/11. If that's the case, how many more of these nitwits are out there right now at this moment putting together a deadly plot to kill lots of Americans in America?
Yeah.
And so understand my concerns. You have politicians in Washington whose only concern is getting campaign contributions, which are nothing more than bribes.
It's the optics. Yeah.
Feathering their nest. You have immigration attorneys in both parties, and that's why comprehensive reform would have paid the legal fees for illegal aliens. And to show you how stupid people can be, people say, well, they're pandering to the illegals. And I said, you don't pander to the powerless.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you pander to the powerless? Why do you think they wanted the legal fees paid? Because they and their friends want to make sure that they get paid for legal services. You have people leaving the Congress right now. They're not running for re-election. One of them is the chairman of a committee, a very important committee.
That's right.
And he's an immigration lawyer. And his son worked with Zuckerberg on Facebook. What did Zuckerberg want? An unlimited supply of high-tech workers, preferably from India, to displace Americans. When these folks leave Congress, and there's a stampede out the door coming in November, folks, what nest do you think they're looking to feather? Not your nest, not my nest, their own nest.
It is.
There is such a conflict of interest, it blows my mind, and no one seems to understand it.
And they're acting not on the best interest of the nation or our security, but simply, as you said, they're wanting to set things up so that they will be, as prosperous as possible once they leave public life. And let's face it. I mean, how many of these politicians have you seen? They walk in the door and they own the shirt on their back, and that's about it. And yet, years later, when they leave, they're worth millions of dollars. And
Chester the molester, Dennis Hastert, came to Washington, from what I read, worth $300,000. By the time he left, before he wound up getting free room and board because he had a problem dealing with little boys, pervert, walked away with almost $10 million. So tell me, do you think he was saving his paycheck as a congressman at $160,000 a year? Let's do the math. 8 years, $160,000. You know what? It doesn't add up to $10 million, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. Well, Michael, we got a phone caller, San Antonio, Texas. Please hang on the line. We do want to hear what you have to say, but we're running short on time, and I want to take just a minute to first of all say thank you, Michael, for joining us today, and secondly,
my privilege.
We're planning on talking to you in 2 weeks if you're available.
Okay.
And the idea here is, folks, Michael spent 3 decades working for the INS as a special agent, and there's a knowledge curve that he can fill better than anybody else I've ever had on the show when it comes to why these politicians are doing what they're doing, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the allowing people that came here as minors illegally to stay in the country. And the biggest point that you've made, Michael, and it bears repeating, is that right now we have no way of establishing when people came to America. And so if they pass an amnesty bill, it's going to be wide open to anybody that wants to claim they've been here since they were 16.
Right. See, when Obama said this was about children, if it was about children, then he should have said, okay, if you're under the age of 21, go to an immigration office. We'll work with you. I would have been supportive of that.
Yep. And Michael, that's all the time we have, but I thank you so much. Sure. Great to talk to you. And
good talking to you.
We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks, my friend.
Excellent.
Check
out my website, michaelcutler.net. Be well, and see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. We got the top of the hour coming up. Hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show on Red State Talk Radio, jjmccartney.com. We will be back.
California, at least 13 people were arrested as hundreds blocked traffic on 2 major highways, waving Mexican flags and burning a giant effigy of Donald Trump. Police fired rubber bullets, and pepper spray at hundreds of protesters after the crowds took over major intersections.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Homophobia, sexual assault, white supremacy.
In terms of reaching out and being inclusive, he's done that too. And a will to risk to make things better and opportunities to embrace the underserved communities.
White privilege.
Load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
Here in New York, as many as 10,000 people surged through the streets and surrounded the barricaded-off Trump Tower where Donald Trump lives.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
We reject the president-elect! Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
I think it speaks to the disenfranchisement of the people that someone like him could be seen as offering anything to the masses.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Little snowflake falling from the sky.
What about gay people? Trump has vowed to protect the LGBT community from a fanatical ideology that represents its biggest threat. Radical Islam.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake, falling, 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 falling.
He is a racist.
Under Obama, more black people are living below the poverty line. The number of African Americans on food stamps has increased 58% under Obama.
On every leading economic issue, on the major economic issues, black Americans have lost ground in every one of those leading categories. So for the last 10 years, it's not been good for black folks.
Is this how the left helps black communities? By making them poorer and more dependent on government. Race relations are at their worst in decades. 8 years of Obama has been devastating for the black community.
He is a sexist. He is a neo-Nazi.
Well, we don't understand why you called in the National Guard.
Falling on my nose.
Not my president. He is a lying ass.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake.
Fake ass.
Little snowflake falling from the sky.
Dumb ass son of a bitch.
Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Snowflake, snowflake, little snowflake falling, 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 falling.
That's not my president! That's not my president! Load up, load up, load up, rubber bullets.
Falling in my hand.
Thank you for taking America back 60 years of progress.
Falling on my head.
You just voted in a Nazi fascist.
Falling on my nose.
What you gonna do about it? What you gonna do?
Live from the Nightside Radio Studios.
This is the J.J. McCartney Show.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Coming to you from Nebraska by way of Alaska. Here's J.J. McCartney.
All right, thank you, Marcus, and welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2 of the J.J. McCartney Show, and we're going to dispatch with the rest of the theme music because I want to get to our caller who has been patiently waiting on the line now for about 13 minutes. San Antonio, Texas. Hello, you're on the J.J. McCartney Show.
How are you doing, Mr. McCartney? This is David.
Mr. David, great to hear from you, my friend. Always a thrill. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing rather well, and yourself?
I'm doing as well as I could ever ask. As far as physically, I'm here. It's a beautiful day. The snow finally stopped falling about 4 hours ago, so we're celebrating now. Although it's been just a brutal winter. The groundhog certainly didn't lie on Groundhog's Day. I can tell you that. What's new with you, David?
Oh, it's same old. Just a lot of work and just nose to the grindstone. But when I do get a chance, I try to call in and support because I just caught about 35 minutes of Mr. Cutler speaking, which, by the way, you have to thank Mr. Cutler for his service when you do talk to him again on my behalf. He seemed to be a very interesting man, and I liked most everything that he said. One of the things that I will agree with him in that I've thought about continually is the last part of his statement about how many of those guys are out there in this world that are like that individual that was still in this country when he was basically a known terrorist and that was obtaining a pilot's license and
right.
Several other privileges and rights that basically somebody in his, with his status should not have even had and should not have even been in the country.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Which is just goes to show this is just like everything else. I don't know if you've seen. There's a gentleman. His name is Bill Whittle, and he made a statement and stood up before Congress and made.
I've had Bill. We've had Bill on the show before, and he's a very powerful speaker. He really is.
Extremely powerful speaker, very articulate man. And one of the things that I think that needs to be brought to question is these people that are actually bringing up this DACA information and that are putting it and holding up Congress, they need to be brought up on charges.
Well, certainly.
You have forsaken your oath. As soon as you did that, you have forsaken your oath. Now, where is Gowdy and the rest of these people that are running, the investigation on half these folks that are in our government? Because when Obama got elected the first time, there were over 88 individuals that were members of the House or the Senate that were members of the Communist Party.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, I'm sure that number has grown now because you can see what they've done is their goal is to try and change the name of everything to soften the blow. So instead of calling themselves socialists and communists, they've gone to progressive.
Right. Right.
You go, okay? Yeah, they've gone to progressive. Well, how did they change the name of illegal aliens?
The illegal immigrants.
What do they call them now?
Yeah.
Undocumented immigrants. No,
yes.
They're not undocumented. They're felons.
Yeah.
They're felons.
And honestly, I mean, it's a public relations ploy that we've seen. I don't know how many times in my lifetime. It's called rebranding. It's where you take the same old thing,
right,
put it in a different package, and then try and sell it to somebody that didn't want to buy it yesterday. And any intelligent person is not going to want to buy it today or tomorrow either.
Right. And so the device that they're using to change laws now is it's offensive. That's offensive.
Yeah.
Or that's racist. So we're going to change laws, just like statutes. That's all that's doing. And people are so ignorant. That is a ploy. And if they knew history, see what they know is that, first of all, people that you have marching down streets that are not even from this country, waving flags of other countries, well, that's fine. We can send you back there.
Exactly.
We can send you back there. The reason why they want all these immigrants into the country is because they're ignorant. I'm ignorant means a lack of knowledge. And that's what that means. They have no clue as to the way the Constitution works. They have no clue as to the way our laws work, and they don't care. And they don't care.
Yeah,
they're coming
exactly
in here
right.
and they're bullying us, and we live here. America, you people better start standing up, or the Lord's going to take away what he gave you.
Well, that's a factor of this as well. I mean, obviously the shooting in Florida was terrible. We would never condone any type of violence like that, but it's as though every single time, and this is the thing that really angers me, every single time there is some sort of gun violence in the country, the news media is gleeful about it. They really are. They don't care about the lives lost. All they care about is forwarding their false narratives.
Well, you and I both know the reason why all these people are behind a group of individuals that aren't even from this country, that have no vested interest in other than they want them in this country to make voters out of them and to try and erase the Republican Party or the Conservative Party out of this country is what they're trying to do. And you've got states where they're introducing Sharia law. How are you going to do that when the Constitution is the supreme law of the land?
Well, this is the thing. These people,
it's not even under.
These people have never cared. They've never cared about the Constitution.
Exactly.
I mean, they are the underminers of the Constitution. They would prefer. And here's the thing that people don't understand is you cannot have one foot in socialism, communism, and one foot in what we call a democratic republic. It simply can't be done.
Exactly.
Because as long as the people have the loudest voice at the polls, then the people, by and large, if they were being spoken to truthfully by the media, that they would never vote against their best interest, and they proved it when they elected Donald Trump president. Electing Hillary Clinton wasn't in the best interest of the nation, and
no, not at all.
Not at all. The message the voters were sending wasn't necessarily that Donald Trump is the ideal, but when you look at Hillary Clinton, she's not only one of the most flawed candidates that ever ran for office, she is one of the most lecherous criminals in the history of American politics.
Oh yeah, well, it's definitely been proven, and I'm just waiting for these people to go to jail so that they can sit next to some of the folks that they put in there. That'll really be nice, wouldn't it?
Right, absolutely.
The other thing that I heard Mr. Cutler mention, and not to change subjects, but I have a little list here, so I don't take up too much of your time. But there are several people that are in Congress, and the gentleman that he mentioned about being worth $300,000 when he first went to Congress, and then a few years later, here man's a multimillionaire. Well, let's start with Maxine Waters, who was asked about her income and how just on I guess you could say a lawyer's salary, because that's basically what they get paid.
Right.
You became a millionaire, like overnight. She said, "Oh, you're racist." That was her response. Nancy Pelosi also needs to be they need to have her mentally checked. Her and Maxine Waters, they really need to be mentally checked, because some of the things that they say are very disturbing. And this is the same party that's calling for Donald Trump to be mentally checked.
Yeah, exactly right.
Really, her mental stability, there's something wrong there. There really is something wrong. And that's not a joke. That's a very serious thing for a person who is in care of or represents or supposed to put the people's best interests in front of her own. She's on record for stating that she didn't read Obamacare and signed it.
Wow.
She's on record. She's on videotape stating that she didn't read it. She signed it.
Yeah, exactly right. And then saying, we have to pass the bill to find out what's in it.
So we can see what's in it.
It's
no, Ms. Pelosi, you need to pull. You need to get some mental health first of all, and take a few weeks off and then quit, because that would be the best thing that could happen for everybody. And then maybe medication will help you see reality, because there's something definitely wrong with that person. And I'm sorry, they should not be holding office, but that's a story for another Oprah. Mr. Reed also needs to be investigated. Yeah, with her friend Oprah. Mr. Reed, and that's another one, needs to be investigated too. These people that have this money that are buddy-buddy with George Soros, they all need to be investigated. You know, they all need to be investigated because they're part of this agenda to transform America. And although people want to change names or try to disguise, the only people they're pulling it over on is the ignorant.
Right.
Because they refuse to educate themselves so they don't see the truth. Let me tell you something. The truth does set you free, but ignorance will kill you in a lot of cases.
That's right. That's right.
You know, the truth will set you free, but ignorance will kill you. And I think what we have is in this country, we have a lot of people just coming over here, and then what they're going to do is they're going to just push and push and push until they change it into what they want it to. No, you're not doing that.
Yeah, not on my watch anyway.
There's too many Americans here. You're going to force the ire of Americans to have the will of God behind them because this is His country. And let me tell you what happens when you start defiling something that has His name on it. There's a whole book. It's called Bible, and it tells you all about that.
Yeah. And
it tells you all about that. And He tells you, I'm telling you, I'm going to come for mine. Now, it takes Him a while He'll give you a little chance for a while, but sooner or later, He's going to come for it.
Yep. And no doubt about it.
He's going to come for His. And America had better start waking up and understand that. You cannot have a country that's founded in God we trust and then start swearing in judges that are swearing in under Sharia law.
Yeah,
it doesn't do any good
putting their hand on a Quran instead of a Bible. Yeah.
Thank you. What good does that do us? He doesn't believe in the same God we do. He'll sell us down the river in a heartbeat. And besides that, that's not even a religion.
No, it's
that's just a political party.
But you know, I made a commitment.
It's a political party to control people.
I made and you're absolutely right. I made a commitment yesterday that we're going to spend more time concentrating on the body of Christ when we talk about. I understand. Islam is an evil death cult when you really get down to it. But the shape that the body of Christ is in, the shape that the church today is in America, it's very alarming, and people need to understand. There's a big difference between saying I'm a Christian and being a Christian. And Billy Graham, I played several excerpts yesterday on the show, and the biggest point I wanted to make was very simply that you have to live a life that's consistent with what you claim to believe, and the way things are today. I mean, first of all, there's people out there hating on Billy Graham. One day after the man died, and they're claiming, "Oh, he denied Christ. Oh, he was this, he was that." Folks, I don't know what motivates people to say things like that. I really don't. But David, say a few words, if you will, about Billy Graham.
The one thing that I can tell you is Billy Graham was a constant for Christ. He was a soldier for the Lord. Billy Graham never claimed to be a perfect person, and I don't expect that Billy Graham was. But I'll tell you this: he did more for the name of the Lord, or in the name of the Lord, to help people to reach God and to reach out to the Lord and establish, I guess you could say, their relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ and bring them to God. And for those that sit back and want to say those types of things about him, that's just the devil speaking, my friend. And for those type of people, I really don't have time.
Yeah.
Because, quite frankly, the reason why we have people that have lost faith in the church and in the clergy, if you remember the Martin Luther King's letter to the clergy,
yes,
from the Birmingham jail.
Yes.
Okay, what we have going on right now is a very similar thing. We have clergy who are sitting back, and it's like, Pharisees, that know legally what they should be doing, but they don't know spiritually because they're disconnected from God. The church is disconnected from God. I mean, for an example, I have a friend that I went to high school with that is a clergy in a church on the northeast side of town, an all-black church, which for me, that's racist. If you're an all-white or an all-black, so it's racist. God takes in everybody, okay? And you should be pushing to make sure that your church is mixed with everyone so that everyone feels at home in God's church no matter what color they are.
Right.
The other thing on top of that is that he 2 terms in a row, voted for Obama. And he knew Obama was not of Christ because Obama's actions were showing him. He would deny it, and then when he finally got caught at the end of Obama's last term, and he was faced with the fact that Obama wasn't what he said he was, you know what he turned around and said? And he put this on Facebook, by the way, when I cornered him on it. Because I kept asking him, I said, how are you and your church and your pastor still following Barack Obama after he supports, first of all, homosexuality, abortion, and everything bad for America, when this is God's country, and you should know that better than anyone? His response was, well, you voted for Trump. Wait a second, I never told you I voted for Trump. I never told you who I voted for. But that's the best that you can come up with? This is why people don't believe in the clergy anymore. This is exactly why people don't believe in the clergy. Because you have clowns like that come in and they clown God. But that's okay. You know, that's something they have to answer for. God is not something that I play with. He's not to be played with. He's my master. He's not my plaything. He's not my call upon servant whenever something goes bad, and he'll do whatever I need him to do. No, I need to do what he needs me to do. And that's what everyone better start realizing in this country. But, you know, you have to also remember, JJ, God's will be done. And it's going to be done, and some of these things have to come to pass. Some of these things have to come to pass. Sometimes we have to lose some things. How many times did the Jews go to start doing what the Lord told them not to do after he just got through saving their behinds a few hundred years before? They drift right on back into, you know, disobedience. And that's exactly what's happened to America.
Yeah, it really is. And, you know, the hard part is even reaching people today, because they're so distracted. Oh, yeah. They're so distracted right now. And you know, it really does. It breaks my heart when I see young people that don't they don't know the Lord, but they don't even know. They don't even have any understanding of who Christ was, who you know, and why we need him in our lives. And you know, I've seen, you know, it's not like I have any more experience than anybody else does, but I have seen so many lives destroyed by not just sin, but the culture in this country. And you know,
well, it's a culture of sin.
Yeah, President Trump today suggested that movies and video games are too violent, and it's a legitimate concern. But I want to take people back, because it wasn't that long ago that America had an appetite for things that were pure and righteous. For example, and this is going to be, some people out there are going to roll their eyes and say, "Oh, how corny can you get?" But 4 decades ago, see if you can remember back that far. 4 decades ago, you know what one of my favorite TV shows was? It was Little House on the Prairie. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see... Michael Landon was a great American. He really was.
Oh, I love Michael Landon.
He had every program that he did...
He made me mad, though.
Why is that?
He made me mad, though. Because he should make you mad, too. Because he died with all his hair.
Well, you know, but the thing is, really,
you of course know that I am just joking.
I know.
I love Michael Landon.
But every show he produced had a moral to it. He did the show. He did Little House on the Prairie, and he was Little House on the Prairie. I mean, he was in control of everything about that show, and it was great. And then he did a program in the 80s.
The show is that you saw his heart.
Yes, absolutely. And in the 1980s, he did a show called Highway to Heaven. Now, this one was a little bit looser with what was necessarily true.
Was it Della Reese?
No, it was actually
Della Reese in that one?
No, that was Touched by an Angel.
There was another one.
Yeah, Highway to Heaven. Highway to Heaven. He played an angel, and Victor French was like his.
Oh yes.
And they worked off of each other very well, and you know Michael Landon had a very sharp wit and a sense of humor that was evident even back in the Bonanza days. There was you knew that this guy had something that was a little bit different than most people, and he started out as the original I Was a Teenage Werewolf. But
yeah, I remember that. And then Little Joe, though, took over his life when he got on Bonanza, though.
Yeah.
Forever branded Little Joe, you know.
Yeah, but you know what? He's one of the few that was
able. He was a good writer. I mean,
he was.
Like you said, he was
Yeah.
in control of all those shows and stuff, and he was more talented than just, you know, the pretty face that everybody saw him for. And you know, he deserves a lot more than that. I mean, it's kind of like Bill Duke, and I'm sure you know who Bill Duke is. You know, Bill Duke is, for example, Bill Duke was the pimp who pimped out Richard Gere in American Gigolo, the black dude, with dark skin. He was also one of the guys that was in the first Predator movie. He was the real dark-skinned black guy that kind of crawled under the log and the Predator targeted his forehead, you know, and shot him and whatnot.
Yeah.
But he's you know, a screenwriter, and he's a very talented guy. So you have a lot of these guys in Hollywood. Unfortunately, the majority of them go with mainstream Hollywood, but you have, you know, your what's his name, Kurt, the Christian movie. He was on, what was it?
Kirk Cameron. Yeah, Kirk Cameron. Yeah.
Kirk Cameron. You know, the individuals like him and several others that have moved over to the religious side, like Pretty Woman's brother. The guy who played Pretty Woman.
Oh, yeah. Eric Roberts. Yeah.
Yeah, or the Roberts. Yeah, Eric Roberts. He's moved over to the religious side. He does a lot of religious movies now.
Yeah, Lee Majors.
That's where a lot of these have gone because mainstream Hollywood has moved away from them because of their religious stance.
Yeah.
And so what? I don't. First of all, I don't own a TV. I watch anything I need to watch selectively on my computer.
I got to tell you. I got to tell you who I miss on TV is Chuck Norris, Walker, Texas Ranger. Because he was like that as well. He tried to put a moral in most of his shows, especially after he found once he found the Lord. He really put the emphasis on it on Walker, Texas Ranger. And
I like that. I like that. They need to have more than that because there's too much, and it's not just violence. It's anti-Christian things on television.
Yes.
Period.
Even if
you mentioned your show.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, even if they aren't anti-Christian, most of the TV shows you see today, simply there's never any emphasis put on God.
Message.
It's as though they have removed and scoured God from their vocabulary, and what they do is they show people narcissistic. They show selfishness as being the most important aspect of a relationship or a marriage. They portray fathers as dumbasses, pardon my French. And they do. Fathers in America, the family unit in America, has been under attack since well before, Married with Children came along.
No, it started becoming under attack when they allowed prayer to be removed from schools.
Well, yes, I'm talking about in the mass media.
Well, yeah, that, and when they started allowing children to, like in Nazi Germany, to call in and turn their parents in for no reason whatsoever, that just took the head right off of whatever, of the family. Because when the father's not running the family, you just cut the head off the unit.
That's right. And
anytime you cut the head off something, it kills it.
And the entire Lyndon Baines Johnson Great Society was designed to have the federal government take over the role of father in the country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's why Adolf Hitler called it the fatherland, because he did the same thing. There's a theme there, ladies and gentlemen. You need to listen up on this. And I'm going to mention something since you did just a moment ago. Since you mentioned your favorite show, mine was The Rifleman, because Chuck Connors didn't care what color you were, but you better be of the right moral character or your butt was going to end up on the wrong side of that rifle.
That show, by the way, that show airs every day on MeTV. I don't know if you ever watch MeTV, but it is MeTV I'm amazed at how
wonderful,
how they have brought these shows back. And I enjoy a lot of their shows. And folks, don't judge me because we have been without cable TV or mainstream media in the house for almost 4 years now. And
oh my goodness.
And it's the best thing we ever did. It really is. We got rid of the dish, we ditched cable, and we said we're going to live without it because it's just too immoral. And so we did that.
It's just crazy.
I mean, and the thing is, I mean, people say, well, I need to have cable so I can keep up with the news. And I'm saying, if you think that the cable news is any different than propaganda, I mean,
than mainstream news. You're kidding. Now, what did they not learn over the last year about the news media lying? And they go right back and watch it.
Exactly right.
That's like sticking your hand on a red-hot piece of metal and then burning your hand severely, then going back and then getting doctored up and healing all, and come right back and stick your hand on the same thing again. America is what they're doing is they're listening too much to the actual media. The media is spewing a very small minority, but they make it seem like a majority. So what they're doing is they're brainwashing people. So, and people hear it enough. Oh yeah, they're this old, they're that old, they're, you know. No, it's the media is controlled by the likes of people like George Soros and his friends. And so they learned this back in Nazi Germany when they were dropping pamphlets out of bombers and when they were using each radio station 24/7 to pump Hitler's propaganda.
That's right.
And that's what they've been doing. And then they use Saul Alinsky's, rules for radicals, the steps to socialize countries or to socialize a government. They've been using that since they got in office. And no one wants to take the time to read it to find out if it's true or not. I guarantee you it's true. Just read it. You'll find out for yourself and sit there with your mouth open.
Yes.
There's a faction in this country that is trying to turn this country into a socialist state. And you'd better wake up, America, because it's happening. And you're going to be doing just like this Austrian lady I saw at one time sitting on a bench when I was in California, just by accident. And she happened to be sitting there. I was talking to this guy, and we were talking about politics and war and this type of thing. And she pulled her sleeve up and had one of those tattoos that you have when you're in a concentration camp during World War II. And she said, you better listen to this man because he's right. She said, because we didn't believe our government was doing what they were doing either until those trucks pulled up in our village and started loading our parents on them.
That's right. That's right. And, it is, I mean, people need to really understand that, there is an absolute effort underway today to undermine the family and to destroy America's access to actual truth in the mainstream media. And when you talk about what the mainstream media is today and why people are so addicted to it, I think it's like Joseph Goebbels in Germany. He said, if you repeat a lie often enough, people will believe it's true. And that is...
And you better tell a big, fantastic one, too, because that's more believable.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And we are now at a point where our children are in real peril because of the fact that the parents can't even break their addiction. How in the world are the children going to stand a chance?
Exactly. And that is a very good point.
And the mainstream media does nothing to introduce children to Jesus Christ. So if the parents are unchurched, the children are unchurched.
But you're not going to get an atheist to promote Jesus Christ, though. And that's the problem.
Right.
The ownership in a lot of these, for example, there's a lady named Miss Hughes that owns a whole bunch of these radio stations around the country. And she is pro-Obama, and which means that she's anti-Christian, because a lot of the stuff that she was pumping out during the time that he was in office was definitely anti-Christian. And she's just one of them. I'm not just pointing the finger at her, but there's a lot of them like her that are going along with this agenda. An agenda is something that you follow no matter what the outcome. You have an agenda, and it needs to be achieved. Just like trying to allow all these people into these DACA, debates in Congress. That's to follow an agenda. That's to sweep America under the carpet.
Yep.
And, these people need to be brought up on charges. And I agree exactly with what Bill Whittle said. They need to be prosecuted for dereliction of duty.
Yes, as well as aiding and abetting known criminals.
Exactly.
It's a crime if you and I do it, but it's not a crime when Congress does it.
Yeah, I'm telling you, they need to be held accountable. These people need to start going to jail. I remember, it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of over 10 years ago, I know for certain, where they found a ring of corruption in China. And they took those 7 individuals, I believe it was 7 or 11 of them, and lined them up against the wall and shot them.
Wow.
Because because it was treasonous what they were doing. And this is why these people do what they do. They feel that they can't be touched. That's like organized crime, basically, is what you're doing. You're the judge, jury, and executioner, and you're keeping yourself from being prosecuted. I say start putting some of these butts in jail, or start putting them in front of firing squads for treason, because remember, this is an agent for another country trying to turn our country when you're committing a treasonous act.
That's right. That's right. And honestly, we're not advocating random violence or anything like that, but there needs to be, we need to reestablish the rule of law. And it has been so ridiculously betrayed by our lawmakers that, many people are unaware that, we do have a set of standards, legal standards in the country. And if we don't uphold those standards, then all of that goes away, and the amendments to the Constitution become irrelevant.
Or just paper. Yeah, they're just paper. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to weaken the Constitution. That's their goal. That's why you have these Chuck Schumers, who's the first one that should be prosecuted right now. You have these Chuck Schumers with his evil butt sitting up there smirking, trying to represent some foreign interests. Well, in our Congress.
Yeah. And what else can we do?
I'm speechless. What needs to be done to have this man removed? He doesn't even need to be in there. If you want to represent them, go to their country and represent them.
Yeah, exactly right. And we have allowed this to go on for so long. And when you allow a cancer into your society like this, ultimately what's going to happen is you'll either die of the cancer itself, or you'll become a part of it. And when that happens, you've lost. I mean, we just can't afford to keep doing this. We really can't. As
far as cancer is concerned, in our government, we're at the malignancy stage.
Yes, we are. We're at that point where
malignant. Yeah.
Once it gets,
if we don't do something, it's going to metastasize.
That's right. Once it gets into the bloodstream, into the vital organs like the liver, the kidneys, or wherever, then you've got real trouble on your hands. You really do. And for people to dismiss the spiritual concerns that we have. It really does. It saddens me greatly when I see people that are so hypocritical. They claim they believe, but when that belief requires action, suddenly they abandon it. And
well, that's because they didn't have it in the first place, and you and I both know that.
Yeah, we do.
It's called lukewarm, brother. It's called lukewarm.
That's right.
That's what it's called. It's something that you go around saying just for show nowadays. I guess is what the way people look at it. But the one thing that is for sure, if they ever had any doubt about whether or not we're in a spiritual war or not, then why is it that God is being attacked on every front that you come across, and anybody that represents Him or represents good, truth, light, or anything of that sort is being attacked?
Yep, I'm
serious. Why is the country of Israel? Why are Jews always attacked? They represent God. Everything that represents God, like marriage, is being attacked. It's been attacked way a long time ago. That was to defunctionalize, the family unit. If you defunctionalize the family unit, you can bring down the block, the town, the village, the city, the state, the country, and anything else you want to do. Ask Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, that's all there is to it.
That's exactly where he started. That's where he started. He dismantled the family unit, and from there it was very easy. And what you have in America is you have parents who shouldn't be parents, and I'm not saying that because I'm not the greatest parent in the world, but what I'm saying is they don't want to be. So what they do is they give their kid an electronic device and think that's a babysitter.
Yep, that's absolutely
that doesn't have
right.
any morals or anything else like that. That's not teaching them anything. So then you send these big, you send these big sin bags out, and they spread this cancer that their parents passed on to them, which is called anti-Christian belief. And next thing you know, we have this sentiment going around of people trying to tell us what they should and shouldn't have, that have no kind of no morals, no principles, no nothing. Nothing founded in God, nothing founded in Jesus whatsoever, but they're going to tell you how it is.
Yep. And, we are now to the point where the damage that's being done is just about, it's almost completed serving its purpose of knocking America away from the righteousness and when America was founded. When America was founded, it was founded on these Judeo-Christian morals. And, the Constitution, was rooted in the Bible. It was rooted in the Magna Carta. And it was designed as a righteous nation. And as I believe it was John Adams said, that the Constitution is wholly inadequate to govern a godless people. If people are not faithful Christians, then all of a sudden this whole thing comes tumbling down, because everybody is always going to act on their own selfish interests. And, one of the most important aspects of parenthood is the aspect of sacrificing your own priorities for what's best for your kids. Sacrificing, sacrificial giving to the church is another example. And today, one of the reasons that the church is getting beat up as badly as it is because so many people have stopped giving. They have stopped volunteering. They've stopped caring. They tell themselves, well, my situation is unique and difficult, and so I'm excused from my responsibilities. And it's never that way.
Well, it's understandable when you have a clergy that runs around spewing a bunch of foolishness and not helping anybody and not making a difference in society. That's to me.
Yeah, that's abdication.
It starts there.
Yeah, that's abdication.
Because what used to happen is you used to go to the church for everything. You go to the church if you needed a wife. You go to the church if you needed, something to eat or a place to, you went to the church for everything. That was the community center. Now what you have is no church.
Yeah, exactly right.
People don't, very few go to church, and very few adhere to any godly principles whatsoever. Those are the same people running around the streets that are gay, lesbian, don't realize that the corruption that's going on because they're used to it.
And they bought into this theory. They bought into this theory that God's okay with me just the way I am.
Exactly. Yeah. No, he says you can be what you want to be, but you will have to answer for that. And I'm not. And I just pointed out gay or lesbian just as an example. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm picking on any group of anybody, because we're all sinners. And that's where that starts.
That's right.
And I don't remember. It's just like I have a landlord that told me, he believes he's going to heaven because he's a good person. I said, you show me in the Bible where it says that you're in charge of, saving yourself, and that you can admonish any sins that you've made during your life, and that you're the one that decides where you're going to go. I said, now I'll agree with you.
Now,
and this is the type of foolishness that people believe.
I love
that have no relationship with the Lord.
I love the tactic of Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, where they go out on the street and they open up conversations with people, and they say, if you were to die right now, where do you think you'd go? And most of them will say, I think I'd go to heaven. And then they have the conversation, well, have you ever told a lie? And they'll say, well, yeah, sure, I've told a lie before. Okay, well, by definition, what does that make you? It makes you a liar. Have you ever stolen anything, no matter how small? Maybe it was a piece of candy. Maybe it was a grape from the produce section of the grocery store. Have you ever stolen anything?
It could have been time away from your employer.
Is that, what if the answer is yes, what does that make you? It makes you a thief. Have you ever lusted after a woman or a man in your heart? What does that make you? It makes you an adulterer. And on it goes. And, the Bible says the wages of sin is death. It does say that, but it goes on to say the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ, his Son. And if you've sinned, then when you bring Christ into your heart, you make him Lord of your life, then the fruit of that is going to be that you repent, that your life is changed.
You have to have the repentive spirit.
Yes.
You have to have the repentive spirit. And what is not really understood, I mean, in so much as, I mean, just a simple example like this. How many times have you ever heard that somebody say to you, hey, my mom died last year, but I know now that I'm standing up here graduating that she's looking down on me. No, she's not.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a
no,
lot
she's
of...
not. Let me explain to you why. And here's the reason why. I don't like just saying stuff without saying and explaining the reason why, because the Lord says why. Okay, when Jesus Christ died and rose again, okay, on the third day, the first thing that happened, read the Bible, the angels took him away and washed him in the Holy Spirit. You know why? Because the Holy Spirit had to wash him, because that sin that he had accumulated and took from all of us made him impure and imperfect. God can't even look on imperfection. That's why there's a Jesus Christ to communicate between the two. That's the connecting piece, because God is totally pure. When you go to heaven and you go in his presence, you're in a totally pure realm that can't be involved in any way, shape, or form with sin. So how's your mother looking down on us? If the Lord can't even do it, if God can't even do it, and it takes Jesus to do it for God, once he's up there in heaven, how is it that your mother's looking down on us? These are the foolish things that people pass on to one another.
Well,
and I'm just using that as an example.
Well, this really points out the biggest problem is that if you claim you're a Christian and yet you don't study the Bible, pray over it, and commit it to your heart, then you don't know what you believe. It's as simple as that. If you're going to have this experience with Christ, you have to have the kind of commitment in your life where you become a changed creature. You're a new creation through Christ, and to miss that point and to not understand that we are yes, we're sinners saved by grace, thank God, but if you don't know what it is you claim you believe, then you really can't say that you believe it. There's an obligation there, accepting Christ as Lord of your life. If you say there's a Lord of my life, what you're really saying is this is going to be the controlling, dominating thing that dictates to my mind, my heart, my spirit, where I go, what I do, what I say. And if that doesn't...
This is the compass for my life.
And if that doesn't guide where you go and what you do and what you say, then you probably just had an emotional moment and didn't have an authentic, transformative rebirth through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit.
Well, I think it's even I guess more embedded than that, because not only are they ignorant, but you have the devil sitting on their shoulder telling them they don't have to listen to this. See, and people have been so indoctrinated, they're so far into sin, the devil's blinded their eyes.
Yes.
And the Lord even says in the Bible, when it comes close to time for you to see me again, people will be walking around in the streets blind to what's right in front of them, like they're drunk off of wine.
Right. And honestly, I got to tell a story. Because for people not to understand this, I hope and I pray that people understand what I'm trying to say. When my daughter was young, we're talking, in the 4 or 5 year old stage of life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes she would misbehave, and we seldom had to resort to a swat on the behind or something like that. Well, at one point in time, she did something, and I can't remember what it was, but it required some reinforcement, shall we say. And as I am getting ready to apply what I felt was the proper amount of punishment, I realized, as I was in the process of doing it, that there was some force that was holding back how hard I would apply the punishment. There was something holding back everything that I was doing so that I made sure that it wasn't too brutal. You know what I mean? In other words, a swat on the butt is a swat on the butt. But, you know, I remember when I was young that I was on the business end of a 2-inch wide leather belt on many occasions.
Well, that was both of us. I mean, you know, almost all of the kids, you know, from our generation, that's what we were used to. We were used to corporal punishment because it sent the message when you didn't have resolve. See, that's what the Lord does to us.
Yes.
He creates fear in us until we get the resolve to understand him. And that's what that's about. But see, the devil knows this, and so we start having stuff like people removing, and they're thinking about reinstating it in a lot of states, the corporal punishment, which I think they should. All they have to do is, like, in our case, in our family, whenever my grandkids get in trouble, just call me, because I'll come up there.
Well, the whole thing about it is,
I went up there last time. We haven't had any trouble with them.
You know, the whole thing about it is, David,
I think it's ridiculous.
You know, the whole thing about it is, it's not that you want to inflict pain on your child. That's not it at all.
No,
it's
not at all.
It's but what it's sending is the message to the child that if it became necessary, that you could, if you needed to. Exactly. And, you know, I got to tell you.
I agree with you, and I'm not going to be a hypocrite and tell you that I'm a wholehearted, you know, spank a kid type thing, because what I did most of my kids' life, and I think each one of my kids might have got a spanking once from me, but I flicked them.
I think once.
Just get their attention.
I think once or twice is all it ever took. And and I got to tell you, when it comes to our daughter, you know, she's 27 now. She has one of the deepest consciences I've ever seen. You know, she really does. That if she does something wrong, she feels the conviction for it immediately. And it really is. It you know, I see that. And first of all, I feel pain for her when I see that she's struggling with something that she's done. But the second thing is, the second thing is that she doesn't let us get away with anything. You know what I mean? Now that she's an adult, it's amazing to me how clear her conscience is. And if we do something that is wrong, not only do we have to deal with the Lord, we have to deal with her. And I tell you, what a rich blessing that is.
Look, let me tell you something real quick. I'm going to tell you a funny story real quick before, because I know you're getting short on time. But let me tell you something really funny real quick. Now, I have 4 children. The 2 girls are the oldest, and 2 boys are the youngest, right? So, you know, of course, the youngest daughter, she thinks she's my second mom, and then, you know, that's her part-time job, and her other part-time job is, you know, she beat up on Dad, right? So she was getting ready to go into the military at one point, and she's since then been in and got out, and she lives in Washington State now, but she tells me, she says, Dad, I'm getting ready to, you know, go into basic training. She told me the date and whatnot. And I said, wow, when you go into basic training, I said, and you come out, you'll be in the best shape of your life. And while you're in basic training, I'm going to try this Body Beast video, and I want to see how it works on my body. I said,
there you go.
You know, so by the time you come out of there, I should be pretty hot. And she looks at me and gets a smirk on her face. She says, and I know something's coming, you know, right? Because I can see the wheels turning, because she's always on me about something, right? Trying to get smart or whatever. So she looks at me and gets a smirk on her face, and she says, old man, I told you before, you're lucky to be room temperature.
Oh, my goodness. Oh boy, that's funny. That's funny.
So that's the one, yeah. And then she also calls up, Dad, are you doing this? Dad, are you doing that? Dad, are you doing that? I said, you know, is this my mother or is this, you know, Tink on the phone? You know, because that's what we call it.
Yeah.
You know, but she
somebody that loves you a lot.
You know, they're all good kids.
They love you a lot.
Yeah, they do. They all do. They're good kids. You know, they're really good kids. And I'm sure your daughter is the same way. You know. She's just doing what she feels that she should be doing as a child, you know, and I do that to my mother too, and I'm sure you do it to your parents, or did, you know, if they're not alive, I'm sure you did when they were, and that's just not the nature of children. When they get a certain age, we start taking their place.
Yeah. You know, what I would do around my dad, you know, I was always looking for a suit of armor, you know what I mean? Before I said anything, you know, it's like, okay, let me first, you know, at least put on the helmet, you know, and then you can say no. My dad was from a totally different generation, and I don't know if you saw it or not on my Facebook wall a few days ago. I wrote a kind of memorial about my dad, and you know the thing.
I really was stunned about how he used to have to, his dad used to just punch him.
Well, when he was young, when my dad was in his early teens, his dad hit him in the forehead with an axe. I mean, that's the kind of father he had. And, to me, it was miraculous that my dad emerged as well-adjusted as he was, considering the example that he had and the violence and the neglect that he suffered as a child. And, the other thing is people don't understand that generation was hardened by the Great Depression and then by the World War. Okay. Right.
They knew what a tough life really was. And
yes.
A lot of people nowadays don't know that.
Yeah.
My grandmother lived through that too. And, I remember her saying and doing things, and I did read that whole story about your dad, and I meant to tell you that was phenomenal. I saw a lot of people made some very positive comments about that, and really I feel sorry for the stuff that he had to go through, but it made him who he was, which was the good part of that.
Yes.
It's like my grandmother told me one time I was standing in the middle of the living room, and I was mad, and I got so mad this is like 15 years ago. I was so mad that tears were just running down my face because I had called to talk to one of my kids, and intentionally the ex took them out so that they couldn't answer the phone, when I called.
Yeah.
So my grandmother said, number one, what's wrong with you? And I said, Granny, I just don't understand why that woman has to do the things that she does to me. She said, come over here and sit down. So I went over there and I sat down on the couch next to her. She said, let me explain to you something. You be thankful that you don't understand why she does the things she does to you, because if you did understand, you'd be just like her.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely right. When you talk about
that's the thinking that comes from those people of that generation, like your dad.
When you're talking about that generation, I mean, you compare that generation to the young people of today. I mean, back then, a hardship was you woke up in the morning and there was nothing to eat for breakfast. Okay. But kids today, if the microwave goes out or the satellite TV is down or, God forbid, the internet is down, that to them is a crisis, And when our parents and our grandparents were growing up, I mean, their idea of a crisis was, holy cow, the mule just broke his leg, and we can't plow the field. How are we going to,
Let me tell you something. As far as watching TV is concerned, there was only certain times we were allowed to watch TV, like on Saturday morning, in the evenings after we had done all our stuff and eaten dinner and done our chores and whatnot. Otherwise, I was like, go outside. You're not coming in here, you big horses, aren't sitting on my furniture and all that other stuff.
My dad used to tell me to go play in the freeway. He said, go play in the freeway. Yeah, that's... But, seriously, when you talk about, not being allowed to watch TV, for my dad and for the grandparents, it was listening to the radio. And the only time the family got together was to listen to the radio in the evening. And the radio was powered by battery. So, it was it was a totally different world. And, if my dad were alive today, I know how appalled he would be at everything that's going on. But I do know this.
Yeah, they would definitely be appalled. And hats off to those old folks, man. I love them.
Yeah, the way the world is now, that's the way the world is now, that's on us. We have to do something about it.
That's right.
Well, David, listen, thank you so much, my brother. It is great to hear from you. And please don't be a stranger. I love anytime you want to talk, feel free to call. We love hearing from you.
Will do. It's a pleasure, as always, and my honor to be on your show. And God bless you and the family. You guys have a very good one and a very good weekend. And I will talk to you soon. I'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you, David. Take care. All right, folks, that's David Oliver, Mr. San Antonio, Texas. Well, not really, but he is from San Antonio, Texas. All right, folks, thank you for being with us today. Great show. Thanks to Michael Cutler for being our guest in Hour 1. And you know what, folks? We'll come back tomorrow with the mysterious Colonel to wrap up the week. In the meantime, by the way, indictments now from Mueller for Manafort and Gates. We'll have full details tomorrow, of course. All right, be good to yourselves, and if you possibly can, be good to someone else. And remember, we'll win in the end because there are more of us than there are of them. Because God is with us. And because we are all in this thing together. Have a great rest of your Thursday. We'll see you on Friday. Until then, God bless. Bye-bye.